The thunder of hooves echoed across the vast Wyoming prairie as Katherine Lawson raced against the approaching storm, her golden hair flying behind her like a banner in the wind. It was 1877, and the untamed West offered no mercy to those who couldn't keep up, especially not to a woman they called too gentle for this harsh land. Yet here she was, 20 miles from the nearest town with darkness falling and only her faithful mare for company. The rain started just as Katherine spotted the silhouette of a cabin nestled against a copse of cottonwoods. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the crude structure, her only hope for shelter. She hadn't planned on being caught in the open, but the injured hawk she'd stopped to tend had delayed her longer than expected. "Easy, Penny," she whispered to her mare as they approached. "Let's pray whoever lives here is hospitable." Before Katherine could dismount, the cabin door swung open. A tall figure filled the doorway, the gleaming barrel of a Winchester rifle pointed directly at her. "State your business," a deep voice commanded. Katherine raised her hands slowly. "Just seeking shelter from the storm, sir. I'm Katherine Lawson from Pine Creek. I was heading back from delivering medicines to the Henderson family when the weather turned." The man lowered his rifle slightly. Lightning flashed again, revealing a weathered face framed by dark hair and a jawline that could have been carved from the surrounding mountains. "A woman shouldn't be riding alone this far out," he said, his tone softening slightly as he took in her drenched appearance. "I manage well enough," Katherine replied, lifting her chin despite the rain streaming down her face. The man considered her for a moment, then stepped aside. "Get yourself in here before you catch your death. There's a lean-to round back for your horse." After settling Penny with a blanket and feed, Katherine entered the cabin, grateful for the warmth emanating from the stone fireplace. The interior was sparse but clean: a table with 2 chairs, a bed in the corner, shelves lined with supplies, and various tools hanging from the walls. "I'm Jackson Graves," the man said, hanging his rifle on pegs above the door. "Most folks call me Jack." "Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Graves." "Jack will do," he said, pouring coffee into a tin cup and offering it to her. "You're the doctor's daughter from Pine Creek, aren't you?" Katherine accepted the cup with surprise. "You know of me, small territory, word gets around." Jack pulled a chair out for her. "Especially about the young lady who rides out to help folks too poor to pay for medicine." Katherine sat, warming her hands on the cup. "My father taught me that healing isn't a privilege for those with money." "Admirable," Jack said, though something in his tone suggested reservation. "But dangerous. These parts aren't friendly to idealists." "I'm tougher than I look," Katherine insisted. Jack's eyes, the color of a stormy sky, assessed her thoughtfully. "Maybe so. But gentleness isn't exactly valued currency out here." "And what currency do you value, Mr. Graves?" she asked, taking a sip of the surprisingly good coffee. "Survival," he answered without hesitation. "Been ranching this land 7 years now. Before that, I rode with the cavalry. Learned quick that softness gets you killed." Katherine noticed the scar that ran along his forearm. "That looks like it needed proper tending." Jack glanced at his arm. "Barbed wire, did it myself." "May I?" she asked, setting down her cup and reaching for his arm. He hesitated before extending it across the table. Katherine examined the jagged scar with practiced fingers. "You're lucky it didn't fester," she said. "Though it would have healed cleaner with proper stitching. Not much call for proper out here, Miss Lawson." Katherine met his gaze. "Proper care isn't weakness, Mr. Graves, it's wisdom." Something flickered in Jack's expression, surprise, perhaps, or a reluctant respect. The storm intensified outside, wind howling around the cabin's corners. Jack rose to stoke the fire. "You'll have to stay the night." "I'll sleep by the hearth." "I don't want to impose, it's not an imposition," Jack cut her off. "It's common sense. No one should be out in this." Katherine wanted to argue but knew he was right. "Thank you, I'll be gone at first light." As Jack prepared a simple meal of beans and cornbread, Katherine observed him moving around the cabin with efficient grace. Despite his gruff exterior, There was something compelling about Jackson Graves' a quiet strength in his movements, a thoughtfulness in his eyes that belied his harsh words about survival. "You've made a nice home here," she said, noticing the small touches that marked the place as more than just shelter: a carved wooden horse on the mantel, carefully preserved dried wildflowers in a tin can, books stacked neatly on a shelf. "It serves its purpose," Jack replied, but she caught the flicker of pride in his eyes. "Been adding to it each year, planning to expand come spring." They ate in companionable silence, listening to the rain pound against the roof. Katherine couldn't help but wonder about this solitary man and what had shaped him. "Do you have family nearby?" she asked. Jack shook his head. "Parents passed before I was 15, no siblings." "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." "Still," Katherine said softly, "loneliness doesn't always fade with time." Jack looked up sharply as if surprised by her insight. "You speak from experience?" Katherine nodded. "My mother died when I was 12. Father raised me alone. He taught me medicine, but never how to fit in with the other girls in town." "Is that why you ride out alone? To escape their judgment?" "I ride out because people need help," Katherine corrected him. "But yes, I suppose it's easier than trying to be something I'm not." "And what is it they think you're not?" "Proper. Ladylike." She smiled wryly. "They say I'm too gentle for frontier life, that I'll never find a husband because no man wants a wife who'll cry over injured animals or spend dowry money on medicines for strangers." Jack studied her, his expression unreadable. Sounds like Pine Creek doesn't understand what strength really is. The comment caught Katherine off guard. Before she could respond, a crash of thunder shook the cabin, causing her to jump. Jack rose immediately, checking the windows and door. "Worst of it's nearly past," he said. "But the creek might be high come morning. We'll need to check before you head back." Katherine helped clear the table, aware of Jack's presence as they moved around the small space. There was something comforting about his quiet confidence, the certainty in his movements. For a man who valued survival above all else, he demonstrated surprising consideration. As the storm began to recede, Jack offered Katherine his bed, insisting that he was accustomed to sleeping rough. Too tired to argue further, she accepted, though sleep proved elusive as she listened to Jack's steady breathing across the room and wondered about the man who had opened his door to a stranger. Morning arrived with brilliant clarity, the storm having washed the world clean. Katherine woke to the smell of coffee and found Jack already dressed and cooking breakfast. "Creek's running high but passable," he reported. "Should be safe enough if you cross at the shallows." "Thank you," Katherine said, accepting the plate of eggs and bacon he offered. "For everything." Jack nodded, a man of few words even in the light of day. But as Katherine prepared to leave, he disappeared into the back of the cabin, returning with a small leather pouch. "Yarrow and comfrey," he explained, handing it to her. "Good for wounds and such. I gather them when I can." Katherine accepted the gift with surprise. "You know herbs?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Cavalry didn't always have a doctor, had to learn what plants might keep a man alive. That's unexpectedly gentle of you, Mr. Graves." "Don't go spreading rumors about me, Miss Lawson," he replied, but the hardness in his eyes had softened. "I have a reputation to maintain." As Katherine mounted Penny, Jack stood in the doorway of his cabin, tall and straight-backed against the morning light. "If you're ever caught in these parts again," he said, "my door's open." Katherine smiled. "I'll remember that." She didn't know then that she would return to that cabin many times over the coming months, nor that Jackson Graves would become far more than a reluctant host offering shelter from a storm. Katherine found herself thinking of Jack often in the weeks that followed. Her father noticed her distraction as they worked together in their small clinic. "That herb pouch," Dr. Lawson said one evening as Katherine organized their medicines. "You've never mentioned where it came from." Katherine felt her cheeks warm. "A rancher gave it to me." "The night of the big storm last month." Her father murmured, eyeing her thoughtfully. "Would this rancher happen to be Jackson Graves?" She looked up with surprise. You know him, patched him up once, couple of years back, tough man, doesn't come to town much. He paused. Good heart, though, under all that grit. Yes, Katherine agreed softly. I believe he does. 3 weeks later, Katherine had reason to test Jack's invitation. A frontier family 15 miles beyond Pine Creek needed medicine for their feverish child. The trip would require an overnight stay, and Katherine decided to stop at Jack's ranch on her return journey. She arrived in early afternoon, uncertain of her welcome despite his words. The cabin looked different in sunlight, sturdier, more welcoming, with a newly built corral beside it where several horses grazed. Jack emerged from the barn as she approached, surprise evident in his expression before he schooled it into something more neutral. Miss Lawson, he greeted her, removing his work gloves, didn't expect to see you again so soon. I was delivering medicine to the Wilson family, she explained. Thought I might take you up on your offer of shelter if it still stands. Of course. Jack gestured toward the cabin. It's not much, but you're welcome to it. Inside, Katherine noticed changes curtains hung at the windows, a rug covered part of the plank floor, and a bookshelf held more volumes than before. You've been busy, she observed. Jack shrugged. Winter's coming. Best to make things comfortable now. They fell into an easy rhythm as Katherine helped prepare dinner, sharing stories of their respective work. Jack described his plans for expanding his small herd of cattle, while Katherine told him about the various ailments she'd treated in recent weeks. You know, Jack said as they ate, most folks wouldn't believe a woman could do what you do. Most folks have limited imagination, Katherine replied. What about you, Mr. Graves? Do you find it so hard to believe? Jack considered her question seriously. No, he finally answered. Not anymore. What changed your mind? I watched you tend that hawk with the broken wing, he said. The night we met, before you knocked on my door, I was out checking the fence line. Katherine blinked in surprise. You saw that, Jack nodded. Most would have ridden past. Or put it out of its misery. You stopped, set the wing, in a storm no less. It seemed the right thing to do. That's what I mean, Jack said, his voice softening. Your gentleness isn't weakness, it's its own kind of strength. The words hung between them, weighted with something Katherine couldn't quite name. Jack cleared his throat, suddenly intent on his plate. My mother was like that, he continued after a moment. Couldn't abide suffering in any creature. Pa called her soft, but she was the strongest person I knew. Katherine felt privileged to glimpse this part of him, the memories he carried, the values shaped by love and loss. Tell me about her, she encouraged gently, and surprisingly he did. As night fell outside the cabin windows, Jack spoke of his mother's courage in leaving everything she knew in St. Louis to follow his father west. He described her determination to create beauty even in harsh surroundings, planting flowers that had no business surviving in Wyoming soil yet somehow flourished under her care. She died of pneumonia, Jack said, staring into the fire. Pa was never the same after. Became harder, taught me that to survive out here you had to be tougher than whatever the territory threw at you. Do you believe that's true? Katherine asked. Jack's gaze returned to her. I did, for a long time. And now I'm not so sure, he admitted. Watching you work, seeing how people respond to your kindness, it reminds me of her. Of what real strength looks like. Katherine felt something shift between them in that moment, a recognition, a possibility opening like a flower to the sun. The next morning, Jack insisted on accompanying Katherine back to Pine Creek. I need supplies anyway, he claimed, though Katherine suspected his motivations ran deeper. They rode side by side across the sprawling landscape, taking their time, stopping occasionally to rest the horses or simply to appreciate the sweeping vistas of prairie and distant mountains. It's beautiful, isn't it? Katherine said as they paused atop a ridge, even with all its dangers. Maybe because of them, Jack suggested. Beauty means more when you understand what threatens it. Katherine glanced at him, struck by the poetry in his rough-hewn words. As they approached the outskirts of Pine Creek, Jack grew quieter. Katherine realized he was bracing himself for town, for people and their judgments. "Will you stay for supper?" she asked as they neared her father's house. "Father would be glad to thank you properly for sheltering me." Jack hesitated, then nodded. "I'd be honored, Doctor." Lawson welcomed Jack warmly, and to Catherine's relief, the two men found common ground discussing the territory's changing landscape and the influx of new settlers. After dinner, her father tactfully claimed exhaustion, leaving Katherine and Jack alone on the porch. "Your father's a good man," Jack said, looking out at the darkening street. "Yes, the best I know," Katherine smiled. "Though I'm beginning to think he has competition." Jack glanced at her, then away. "You shouldn't say such things, Miss Lawson." "Why not, if they're true?" "Because a man like me has no business thinking about a woman like you." His voice was low, almost angry. "I'm a rancher with dirt under my nails and blood on my hands from the war. You're educated, refined. I'm a woman who chooses her own path," Katherine interrupted. "And I've never cared much for what others think I should want." Jack finally looked at her fully, something raw and honest in his gaze. "What do you want, Katherine?" The use of her first name sent warmth blooming through her chest. "I want to help people. I want to make a difference in this territory." She took a breath. "And I find myself wanting to know you better, Jackson Graves." Jack's expression softened. "I'd like that too." In the months that followed, Katherine and Jack created a pattern of visits between his ranch and Pine Creek. With each meeting, the connection between them deepened. Jack began riding into town more frequently, even attending church services occasionally, a development that set the local gossips buzzing. Katherine discovered that beneath Jack's stoic exterior lay a man of principle and surprising tenderness. He whittled tiny wooden animals for the children she treated, carved a new sign for her father's clinic, and once rode 30 miles to fetch a specific medicine when their supply ran low. Winter arrived with fierce determination, blanketing the territory in snow and testing the resolve of even the most seasoned settlers. In early December, Katherine received an urgent message: Jack had been injured breaking ice for his cattle to drink. Without hesitation, she packed her medical bag and set out through the snow. She found him pale and feverish, a deep gash in his leg showing signs of infection. For 3 days, Katherine fought to save him, applying poultices, changing bandages, and forcing broth between his cracked lips when he was lucid enough to swallow. On the 3rd night, his fever broke. Katherine, exhausted from her vigil, wept with relief when Jack's eyes finally cleared and focused on her face. "Katherine," he whispered, his voice hoarse, "you should have stayed in town. It's too dangerous out here alone." She wiped her tears, shaking her head. "I wasn't about to let you die from stubbornness." Jack's hand found hers. "My mother always said God sent angels to the deserving and the undeserving alike. I'm surely the latter." "Don't say such things," Katherine admonished gently. "You're a good man, Jack." "I've tried to be," he said, his grip tightening on her fingers. "Since meeting you, I've tried harder." As Jack recovered, their relationship shifted again. The near loss had crystallized something between them, a recognition that what they shared was both precious and fragile. One crisp January afternoon, Jack asked Katherine to ride with him to a ridge overlooking his property. Despite his leg not being fully healed, he insisted on helping her down from her horse, keeping his hands at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "I have something to show you," he said, leading her to where a stand of young cottonwoods grew. In the center stood a partially constructed cabin, larger and more solid than his current home. "Jack," Katherine breathed, taking in the new structure. "What is this?" "My future," he answered simply. Then, with heartbreaking vulnerability in his eyes, he added, "I hope." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box. Inside nestled a ring, a delicate silver band set with a small blue stone the color of Wyoming skies. "It was my mother's," Jack explained. "She made me promise to give it only to someone who reminded me of what true strength looks like." Katherine felt tears gathering. "They say you're too gentle for this life," Jack continued, his voice gaining confidence. "But your gentleness is my strength, Katherine. It reminds me there's more to living than just surviving." He took a deep breath. I'm asking if you'll share that life with me, as my wife. Catherine's answer came without hesitation. Yes, they were married in April when the prairie bloomed with wildflowers. The entire town of Pine Creek turned out for the celebration, many genuinely happy to see the union of the doctor's daughter and the rancher who had gradually earned their respect, Dr. Lawson gave his daughter away with pride, whispering, "Your mother would have approved," as he placed her hand in Jack's. The newlyweds moved into the new cabin, which Jack had finished with loving care. Katherine established a small clinic in one room, treating neighbors from miles around while continuing to assist her father in town several days each week. As spring turned to summer, Katherine discovered she was expecting their first child. Jack's reaction, a look of wonder followed by fierce protectiveness, confirmed everything she had come to know about the man she'd married. "I never thought I'd have this," he confessed one night as they sat on their porch, his hand gently resting on her growing belly. "A family. A purpose beyond just making it through another season." "And now?" Katherine asked, covering his hand with hers. "Now I can't imagine any other life," Jack said. "You've taught me that gentleness isn't a liability out here, it's essential. It's what makes the hard parts bearable." Katherine leaned against his shoulder. "We make each other stronger." Their daughter, Emma, arrived in the coldest part of winter, a tiny, fierce being with her father's dark hair and her mother's determined spirit. Jack held her with hands that had branded cattle and built fences, now impossibly gentle as they cradled new life. "She's perfect," he whispered, awe in his voice. "She's strong," Katherine agreed. Like her father, Jack shook his head, gazing at his wife with naked adoration. Like her mother. As Emma grew, so did the Graves Ranch. Jack's careful management and Katherine's medical practice provided stability unusual for frontier families. They welcomed a son 2 years later, Samuel, named for Katherine's father, and their home became known throughout the territory as a place of both healing and hospitality. 5 years into their marriage, a severe drought tested the resolve of every rancher in the region. Many lost entire herds, others abandoned their claims entirely. Jack worked from dawn until well past dusk, moving cattle to whatever water remained, digging deeper wells when springs failed. Katherine found him one evening slumped against the barn wall, exhaustion etched in every line of his face. "We'll lose it all," he confessed, the admission clearly painful. "Everything I've built, everything I wanted to give you and the children." Katherine sat beside him, taking his calloused hand in hers. "We haven't lost anything yet." "Katherine, no," she interrupted firmly. "Listen to me, Jackson Graves. When we married, you said my gentleness was your strength. Well, your determination is mine. We will survive this together." And they did. Katherine organized the neighboring ranchers' wives to pool resources. Jack worked with other men to dig a communal well that tapped into a deeper aquifer. When autumn finally brought rain, the Graves Ranch had suffered losses, but remained intact. The experience cemented their partnership in ways that even love hadn't fully accomplished. Jack came to rely on Katherine's practical compassion as much as she valued his steadfast resilience. By their 10th anniversary, the original cabin had been expanded twice more. Their dining table regularly hosted travelers, neighbors in need, and Katherine's patients. Emma, now 9, showed signs of inheriting her mother's healing touch, while 7-year-old Samuel shadowed his father through every ranch task. "Did you ever imagine this?" Katherine asked Jack one evening as they watched the children help a newly born foal take its first wobbly steps. "Never," Jack admitted. "I thought survival was enough. You taught me to want more." Katherine smiled, remembering the gruff man who had once declared gentleness a liability in the harsh territory. "And now," Jack pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Now I know that surviving isn't living. You need both strength and tenderness to build something that lasts." As twilight painted the Wyoming sky in shades of lavender and gold, Katherine thought about the journey that had brought them here from a stormy night and reluctant shelter to a life rich with purpose and connection. They still say I'm too gentle for frontier life, she mused. Jack's laugh rumbled through his chest. Let them talk, we know better, indeed they did. In a territory that demanded grit and fortitude, Katherine and Jack had discovered a powerful truth. That gentleness, properly paired with strength, created something indestructible, a love that could weather any storm the West might bring. When Emma married at 18, Jack whispered the same words to her that had changed his life. Find someone who sees your gentleness as strength. And as Katherine and Jack grew older together, watching their family and ranch flourish in the increasingly settled territory, they remained living proof that the harshest landscapes could nurture the tenderest hearts, if only one had the courage to remain gentle in a world that valued toughness above all else.